As the 2024 NASCAR season came to a close, NASCAR began posting who had won every NASCAR championship as they were all decided. While nearly all NASCAR fans know about the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series, it astonished me to see how many people in their replies for the posts about other series did not know those series even existed. When most people think NASCAR, they just think of the Cup Series or maybe the Xfinity and Truck Series if they consider themselves a big enough fan. Yet what very few people seem to realize is there are a whole 21 officially operating NASCAR racing series. So today we will be briefly exploring all 21 series and their different cars, schedules, points and race formats, notable drivers, and histories. There's so much to get into, so let's get started. Of course, we must start with the series everyone knows about, the NASCAR Cup Series. Drivers from all 20 of the other NASCAR series all have one goal: make it into this series. A big debate in motorsports is there a pinnacle of motorsport? And if so, what is it? Truly, there is no overall pinnacle, as each subset of motorsports has their own. That's exactly what the NASCAR Cup Series is, as this series is where the best stock car racing drivers in the world have competed in, the highest level of the sport since 1949. 40 cars are allowed to start each race, and those drivers compete in a 36 race long schedule plus 2 exhibition races, the Clash and All-Star races. Of course, with it being the pinnacle of the sport, the biggest races in stock car racing lie here. Those being the Coke 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, NASCAR's longest race, the Brickyard 400, raced on the biggest stage in motorsports of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway, NASCAR's original 500-mile race, the Bristol Night Race, one of the greatest atmospheres in all of sports, and, of course, the Daytona 500, stock car racing's biggest race. The points format is pretty complicated, as 16 drivers qualify for a 10-race-long elimination-style format. Every 3 races, the worst 4 drivers are eliminated before they're reset for the next round, all ending with the championship 4. One race where the 4 drivers who have made it there have one goal: beat the other 3 and you're the champion. A typical race weekend consists of a single 20-minute practice session leading right into a 2-round qualifying session on Saturday with the race on Sunday. Toyota Camrys, Chevrolet Camaros, and Ford Mustang Dark Horses, all in the NASCAR Next Gen style, are the cars these drivers take all around America for a single season. But the series is no longer confined to the United States, as for the first time ever, NASCAR is heading to Mexico City for a race in 2025. Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt Sr., and Jimmy Johnson lead the way with 7 Cup Series championships each, while the King, Richard Petty, sits at the top of the all-time wins list with 200 wins, as second-place David Pearson is a whole 95 wins behind with 105. Connecticut's Joey Logano was the 2024 champion with 4 wins, plus the All-Star Race win, as he cemented himself as one of only 10 drivers all-time to reach 3 Cup Series championships. The series' biggest draw would simply be it being the pinnacle of the sport, along with the great racing and rivalries and the most diverse schedule in all of motorsports. You can catch the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series across the Fox networks, Amazon Prime Video, TNT, and the NBC family of networks. Just below the NASCAR Cup Series on the developmental ladder is the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The series slogan says it all: names are made here. With its inaugural season taking place in 1982, this series began mostly as a short track racing series in the Southeast. As it progressed, more races at bigger tracks kept being added until the schedule became nearly identical to the Cup Series. The Xfinity Series season is still shorter than the Cup Series, however, with there being 33 races instead of 36, and there are no exhibition races. No true crown jewels exist for the Xfinity Series. However, tracks where the Cup Series crown jewel races are held can serve as those races, those being at Daytona, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Darlington, and Bristol. The same playoff format as the Cup Series is used in the Xfinity Series, only slightly condensed, so just 12 drivers make the playoffs, and there are 7 playoff races instead of 10, essentially the same format as Cup, just with no round of 16. 38 cars qualify for each event, as Chevrolet Camaros, Ford Mustangs, and Toyota Supras are used in this series. The cars have substantially less downforce and dirty air than the Cup cars, meaning the drivers are always right on the edge of control with these cars. With this essentially serving as the final developmental series which prepares drivers for the Cup Series, most drivers don't stick around here long, which explains why the most number of championships is a tie between 9 drivers, those being Sam Ard, Jack Ingram, Larry Pearson, Randy LaJoie, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Tyler Reddick. However, a clear name jumps off the list when talking all-time wins. Kyle Busch, the 2009 Xfinity Series champion and two-time Cup Series champion, sits alone at the top of the all-time wins list with a staggering 102 wins. Second place Mark Martin has 49 wins for comparison. However, there are still a plethora of drivers who stick in the Xfinity Series for their entire careers or are forced to do so because they don't have the money to get a Cup ride. Economically, the Xfinity Series makes the most sense to own a team in any of the 3 national touring series due to the best ratio of cost to build a car to the race payout. In 2024, Justin Allgaier picked up his first Xfinity Series championship with 2 wins on the season. I would advise you check out this series to simply watch the incredible racing product, as fans argue this is the best NASCAR series in terms of racing quality. All 33 races in 2025 will be available to watch on the CW. The final of the 3 NASCAR National Touring Series is the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. The origins of this series date back to the early 90s and the decline in popularity of off-road truck racing. A group of off-road racers decided to create their own trucks which could be raced on asphalt, which NASCAR fans saw and fell in love with. NASCAR themselves were intrigued, and the series was officially born in 1994. Much like the Xfinity Series, this season would begin as one primarily for short track racing, with it gradually evolving to racing wherever the Cup or Xfinity Series does. The schedule is usually around 23 races long, but has expanded to 25 races for 2025. A crown jewel race did exist for the Truck Series, the Eldora Dirt Derby, which ran from 2013 through 2019, but was canceled due to COVID and never came back. Now, the biggest truck races are often regarded as the races at Daytona and Talladega, since they pay the most amount of money to win. Playoffs exist in the Truck Series as well, however, the system is unique to this series. Only 10 drivers make the Truck Series playoffs, which spans over 7 races like Xfinity. The rounds go 10, 8, and 4, making this the only real-life NASCAR series with a playoff elimination format that does not eliminate 4 drivers per round every round. The vehicles in this series are truly unique, as it features Chevrolet Silverados, Ford F-150s, and Toyota Tundras, where 36 trucks from those 3 manufacturers qualify for a race. While the Truck Series has become more of a developmental series, typically getting drivers ready for Xfinity or to go straight to Cup, there are still plenty of drivers who stay in this series for their whole career or because it is the highest level they can afford to get a ride in. A great example of someone making a career in trucks is Ron Hornaday Jr., who leads the way with 4 Truck Series championships. Other notable truck champions currently in the NASCAR Cup Series include Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, Christopher Bell, and Zane Smith. Just like in the Xfinity Series, Kyle Busch leads the way in the series all-time wins list with 66 wins, as second place Ron Hornaday Jr. has 51. Wisconsin's Ty Majeski won the 2024 Craftsman Truck Series Championship, recording 3 wins on the season en route to his first title. If you're someone who enjoys a bit of chaos in your racing, then the Truck Series is probably what you're looking for, as these races can get insanely chaotic. If you want to tune in to the 2025 NASCAR Truck Series season, you can do so by catching the races on the Fox family of networks. Now that we've covered the 3 National Touring Series, we can now move on to the 5 different NASCAR Regional Series. These series all stick to a specific area of the country, with old-school grassroots short-track racing and hard-working blue-collar drivers making up the larger scales. The first we'll be diving into is the most well-known regional series, the ARCA Menards Series. Founded in 1958 in Toledo, Ohio, the ARCA Menards Series is primarily a Midwestern short-track racing series. Starting off running mostly just Midwestern short tracks, the series began to grow once NASCAR founder Bill France invited them to race at Daytona International Speedway during Speed Weeks, with the relationship peaking in 2018 after NASCAR purchased the ARCA Racing Series. Over time, the series began to expand and race at bigger tracks while maintaining a 20-race schedule and staying true to their Midwestern roots. Therefore, the ARCA schedule is arguably one of the best and most diverse in NASCAR, as they race the superspeedways of Daytona and Talladega, a few road courses, some intermediates, a plethora of Midwestern short tracks, and even 2 dirt races in Springfield and DuQuoin, Illinois. While no races are officially crown jewels, the biggest races on the calendar would be Daytona and Talladega, which pay the biggest purses and see the biggest car counts, the Dirt Double of Springfield and DuQuoin, Salem, which has hosted the most ARCA races at a single track, and Toledo, where the series officially calls home. Drivers in ARCA typically come in 2 categories: the young, heavily funded drivers looking to gain experience, and those who race their own equipment or find sponsorship to get a ride in someone else's car to essentially race as a hobby. Therefore, ARCA races sometimes feel like there are 2 different classes of cars in the same race: the heavily funded guys in top-tier equipment, and the independents who don't have the budget to match their pace. Due to the interesting economics of this series, many drivers only run a few races per season, and the amount of full-time competitors is usually pretty low. ARCA wants a driver who runs every race to be the champion, as opposed to someone who runs half the races and wins all of them, and the points reflect that. A maximum of 40 cars are allowed in each race, but the average field size per race is around 27 cars. ARCA races the former Gen 6 NASCAR Cup Series cars, but with far more restricted engines. However, not all Gen 6 models are allowed on ARCA, as those that are allowed are the Toyota Camrys from 2013 through 16, Chevrolet Impalas, and Ford's Gen 6 models, the Fusion and Mustang, both of their models. The race winner is awarded 43 points, with every position's point total decreasing by 1. Bonus points are available as well, as you get 3 extra points for winning the race and 1 extra point for winning the pole, leading a lap, and leading the most laps, making the most amount of points you can get in a race be 49. 200 bonus points are also available for every season, as the schedule is broken up into 4 groups of 5 races. Drivers who compete in every race in that 5-race stretch receive 50 points, meaning 200 points are guaranteed if you run all 20 races. A typical race weekend is a 1-day show, with a 45-minute practice session being run shortly before qualifying, with a race to follow a few hours later. Frank Kimmel is undisputably the greatest ARCA driver of all time, as he leads the way with 81 wins, 39 more than second-place Tim Steele, and an astounding 10 championships, with 8 of them coming consecutively. Other notable champions include current Cup Series drivers like Ty Dillon, Chris Buescher, Chase Briscoe, and Ty Gibbs, as well as the 2024 Xfinity Series champion Justin Allgaier. Andreas Perez won the 2024 ARCA Menards Series championship going winless, becoming the first Mexican-born driver to win a title in this series. I would recommend you check out the ARCA Menards Series to see the stars of tomorrow today, and to see for yourself how this series is supported by the hard-working racers who show up to the track every race simply because of their passion for racing. In 2025, you can catch all 20 ARCA Menards Series races across the Fox networks and simulcast on FloRacing. What if I were to tell you that there isn't just one ARCA series and that there's actually 3? That's precisely the case, and it brings us to the pair of our next 2 series, the ARCA Menards Series East and the ARCA Menards Series West. Both of these series use the same cars as the ARCA Menards Series, otherwise called the ARCA National Series, as well as the same points format with the exception of the bonus points for competing in multiple races. Prior to NASCAR's purchase of the ARCA Racing Series, these series were known as the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East and West, serving as another regional development ladder, or as another way for people to race a full NASCAR point series, or just a few races as a hobby. Both series began as their own entities, with the West Series dating back to 1954 as the Pacific Coast Late Model Series, racing primarily on short tracks in California. The East Series dates back to only 1987, originating as the NASCAR Busch Grand National Series, a northeastern United States racing series. Eventually, they began to add races down south and expand their schedule. Speaking of those schedules and the series in general, the livelihood of them highly differs, despite essentially being the same on paper. At the time of recording, the 2025 East and West schedules have not been announced yet, so we must go off of the 2024 schedules. ARCA East has been in a rough spot since the series rebranded to become an ARCA series, as there are only 8 races on the calendar. Even worse, 5 of those 8 races are combination races with the National Series, meaning there are only 3 true East Series races. The average car count per race in 2024 was around 24, but when just the 3 non-combination races are taken away, that number drops down to only about 17. When you compare the old K&N East Series to the rebranded ARCA East Series, we have seen a significant decline in entrants, races, and competition levels, as you can tell. ARCA West, however, is doing just fine, as their 2024 season was 12 races long, with only one of them, the season opener in Phoenix, being a combination race. Far more competitive fields exist in the West Series, despite the average field size in 2024 being only about 22 cars. The smaller field size is more acceptable in the West Series as opposed to the East due to more competitive cars racing. Additionally, the West Series has more schedule variety, as 3 of the 12 races are in road courses, with the other 9 being on short tracks, as opposed to all 8 East races being on short tracks. 2 of those races coming at Portland, and the other coming at Sonoma, which is arguably the most prestigious East or West race there is, as plenty of National Series drivers enter that race to gain more experience at Sonoma, creating stacked lineups. In 2024, the East Series saw a dramatic championship battle between Connor Zilisch and the 2023 champion William Sawalich. As in the championship race at Bristol, all Zilisch needed to do was essentially not wreck, and he had it won. Unfortunately for him, he would end up wrecking out of the race, and William Sawalich would go on to win his second ARCA East championship, recording 3 wins in the 8-race season. In the West Series, it would be the same story, the defending champion winning their second career championship, that being Sean Hingorani, who would also capture 3 wins en route to the title. I would recommend you check out these series to see some great short track racing on a major level and to support the hard-working teams who show up. If you want to check out the 2025 ARCA Menards Series East and West races, all races for both series will be available on FloRacing, with the combination races with the ARCA National Series all being available on the Fox networks as well. Contrary to popular belief, the NASCAR Cup Series, which held its first season in 1949, is not the oldest NASCAR series. Perhaps NASCAR's most underappreciated series originated in February of 1948, just a week after NASCAR was founded. At the time of NASCAR's founding, 2 series existed, or would soon exist: the NASCAR Strictly Stock Series and the Modified Tour. The Strictly Stock Series became known as the Premier Series, what we know today as the NASCAR Cup Series, with newer and faster cars competing that had to mimic the car's showroom counterpart. While in the Modified Tour, really no rules regarding what car you ran or what modifications you did to it existed, thus the name Modified Tour. In modern-day racing, the most common example of a series where teams must innovate to create the fastest cars is Formula One, while most other series run a spec chassis. But from 1948 to 1984, the Modified Tour was exactly like modern-day Formula One, where teams had to innovate and create whatever their heart desired to be fast. Many teams began designing open-wheeled cars, and NASCAR responded by implementing one requirement for all cars: bumper bars. These would prevent cars from launching off of one another through touching wheels, as seen in other open-wheeled racing series. The cars seen today are essentially identical and have not changed much at all since 1985, which is to thank 9-time champion Richie Evans for. In 1985, the series would shift from having a nearly 80-race schedule down to just 29, beginning the modern era of the series. A universal type of car was needed for this modern era, and they decided to go with Evans' design, which is essentially what you're seeing right now. The reason this design was perfect was because of Evans being 2 things: a penny pincher and a damn good mechanic. He would build the fastest cars for very low money, and NASCAR wanted this for all the teams going forward because it made the most economic sense to get big fields. Now, digging into the series today, the schedule consists of 16 races, mostly all coming in the Northeast, their adoptive home. The bigger races are found at Thompson, Riverhead, and Martinsville, with others running alongside National Series weekends at North Wilkesboro, Richmond, and New Hampshire being big events as well. One of NASCAR's current Cup Series drivers used this series as a proving ground, that being 2013 champion Ryan Preece. Other notable National Series drivers from the modern era include Jimmy Spencer and Mike McLaughlin. Most drivers stick to racing in the modified tour their entire careers, with no better example of this being the series' all-time wins leader, Mike Stefanik. All-time records are a tricky thing with this series as there isn't a definitive record of all pre-modern era races. Therefore, Stefanik is regarded for having the most wins due to having the most in the modern era. Stefanik also holds the most modern era championships with 7, while Richie Evans has the most overall with 9. In 2024, New York's Justin Bonsignor claimed his 4th Modified Tour championship with 5 wins on the season. I would recommend you check out the Modified Tour to see NASCAR's most unique race cars in action for great short track racing and to fully enrich yourself with the history of NASCAR's oldest series. If you want to watch the Modified Tour in 2025, all races will be available live on FloRacing. Our final NASCAR Regional series to cover is NASCAR's true grassroots racing series, the NASCAR Weekly Series. Unlike any other NASCAR series, there is no full season schedule. 54 local short tracks across the United States and Canada make up the Weekly Series, with all of them awarding individual champions and combining for larger scale championships. All tracks in the Weekly Series run races at that track for a given amount of weeks, from late spring through late summer to early fall, and determine a track champion based on whoever scores the most points at that track all season. But there isn't just one type of car involved, there's a plethora of them. From pro late models to late model stocks, modifieds, legends, hobby stocks, sportsmen, Hornets, and so much more that diehards will probably yell at me for not mentioning. There are so many types of cars in the NASCAR Weekly Series, and each track varies on what they run. Traditionally, the series with the most speed, usually pro late model stocks, or modifieds, depending on the region, are the ones which will be awarded with Division I points, which make up the overall national championship. Those championships come in 3 ways: track champions, regional champions, and national champions. Track championships are won by scoring the most points at one track. Regional titles are won by having the most points out of anyone classified as a driver in one of the 4 regions, and the national championship is won by whoever scores the most points out of anyone in the entire series across the United States and Canada across a single year. The drivers in the Weekly Series are exactly what NASCAR was created on. People who have an immense passion for racing and work hard all week to spend their money to do it. True blue-collar racers. Therefore, most Weekly Series drivers stick to the Weekly Series for their entire career because either they cannot afford to race at a higher level or they simply don't want to. That's not to say it's impossible for these drivers to race at a higher level, though, as 2 great examples of this are the 2020 and 2022 champions, Josh Berry and Lane Riggs. Berry drove late models for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in this series before getting a shot in the Xfinity Series, where his talents earned him a full-time NASCAR Cup Series ride. Lane Riggs, son of former NASCAR Cup Series driver Scott Riggs, proved his talents and earned a ride from Front Row Motorsports in the NASCAR Truck Series in 2024, where he recorded 2 wins and proved to be the dominant driver on short tracks. As for the Weekly Series in 2024, Virginia's Connor Hall earned his 2nd career and consecutive NASCAR Weekly Series championship, where he'll look for a 3rd in 2025 as the new Junior Motorsports late model driver. Even if Hall earns his 3rd title in 2025, that would still leave him 2 behind Larry Phillips and Philip Morris, who have the most Weekly Series championships with 5. While there is no full season schedule, there are still some huge races in the Weekly Series, such as the Valley Star Credit Union 300 at Martinsville and the South Carolina 400 at Florence. I would recommend you check out this series because of the phenomenal grassroots short track racing and because chances are this is the most accessible NASCAR series for most fans. Come out and support your local drivers if there's a weekly series track in your area. If you can't come out and watch in person, a good amount of weekly series tracks air all of their races live on FloRacing, including all of this series' biggest events. I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites in this video, but I just can't help but do so with this next series. This is the HSR NASCAR Classic Series, probably the most unknown NASCAR series, which makes sense considering this is NASCAR's newest series and there's hardly any way to find out about it, with it having almost no promotion at all. But in terms of potential, no series has more than the Classic Series. I mean, just look at these cars. Historic auto racing is nothing new, and NASCAR race cars have been competing like this for years. However, in the summer of 2024, NASCAR announced they would be collaborating with the historic sports car racing series to officially create a historic NASCAR series, the NASCAR Classic Series. The cars you'll see competing makes you feel like you're not even witnessing real life, with the series rules having a major role in that. Only 2 rules apply for this series. Number 1, any former NASCAR or ARCA race car is allowed to race as long as the car meets the body specifications of its time. And number 2, all cars must race a paint scheme previously ran in any NASCAR or ARCA series or have their paint scheme approved by the series in the rare times where the scheme never raced in a NASCAR or ARCA series. Because of the rules, you'll see true multi-class racing and multi-generational racing, which NASCAR has never seen before. Meaning in a single race, you could see a 1980s Jeff Bodine car, a 2005 Tony Stewart Cup car, a 2021 Chase Elliott Cup car, a 2015 Xfinity car, a John Hunter Nemechek 2021 truck, and a Frank Kimmel 2008 ARCA car, and even a Gen 6 car painted to look like Lightning McQueen in the same race. In fact, those are all cars that have competed in this series. The real unfortunate things about these series are the lack of races and the lack of accessibility. In 2024, only 5 known races were held. That's not a very easy way to tell where and when they're even racing, and there's no way to watch the races unless you're at the track. Another issue to a large portion of NASCAR's American fan base is that they only race on road courses at the moment, where most fans would rather watch these cars race on ovals. If those problems can be resolved, I see this series reaching massive popularity because it would be a plethora of nostalgia for NASCAR fans, which we love most. Especially in an era of the sport where NASCAR is working hard to gain a new, younger fan base, and in doing so, making longtime viewers stop watching. This is the perfect way to get those fans back while also expanding the overall NASCAR outreach. Picture this: a race weekend at a new venue designed to get newer, younger fan bases, such as the Chicago Street Course or the LA Coliseum, as we've seen in recent years. But instead of bringing the Cup and maybe Xfinity series, they bring the Classic series along too as the support series, and they promote the hell out of it and televise it. Older fans who feel pushed away from the sport could watch the cars from their glory days as a fan, while newer fans could still get interested in NASCAR. It's a win-win scenario. The drivers are another factor in the popularity of this series, as a couple of drivers who competed in the Charlotte Roval Classic Series race include John Hunter Nemechek, a current Cup driver, former Cup drivers Joe Nemechek and Matt Tifft, Trackhouse Racing owner Justin Marks, and Monster Jam superstar and occasional NASCAR driver Camden Murphy. This is also NASCAR's only series without a points format and the only one which does not crown a champion. If these series can figure out what their promotion and accessibility will look like, the sky is the limit for the future of NASCAR and getting their older fan base back. And I encourage you to go to these events if you can, since it's the only way to watch this series, and the cars are simply gorgeous. Now that we've covered all the domestic series, we can now begin our exploration of NASCAR's 8 international series across the 4 different pods. Our first to dive into is NASCAR's oldest international series, and the one most of us American fans know the most about, the NASCAR Mexico series. Mexico had been primarily filled with open-wheel racing fans, and still is today, but in 2004, NASCAR collaborated with Mexican entertainment company OSA to create the Desafío Corona, a Mexican stock car racing series. For 3 years, this series continued to gain popularity and infrastructure, and NASCAR would officially rename the series the NASCAR Mexico Series in 2007. Despite the name change, official NASCAR records still consider 2004 to be the opening season, even though it was not officially called a NASCAR Series at that time. The series races across many short tracks and some road courses in Mexico, with 2 appearances outside of Mexico in their history. Both of those being in the United States, as they raced at Phoenix Raceway from 2013 through 2015 and held their most prestigious race ever in 2024 at the LA Coliseum, which was run right after the NASCAR Cup Series clash. That race was an exhibition event, as the 2024 schedule was made up of 12 points races with an 8-driver, 2-race-long playoff. The cars you'll see racing in the Mexico Series include the Chevrolet Camaro, Ford Fusion, and Toyota Camry designs. Under the hoods, these cars have 5.7-liter 570cc V8 engines with 400 horsepower and are substantially lighter than most other NASCAR race cars at just about 2.7 thousand pounds. Mexico Series drivers all typically have one goal: to make their name known and move to the United States to become a National Series driver. The perfect example of this, and likely the reason you as a viewer already know about the Mexico Series a little bit, is Daniel Suarez. While Suarez never won a Mexico Series championship in his time there, he secured the 2010 Rookie of the Year honors and won 10 races before coming to the United States. Having sponsorship backing from companies like CompScope, owner of Eris, and loads of talent, he secured a NASCAR Xfinity Series ride with Joe Gibbs Racing, where he'd be crowned the 2016 Xfinity Series champion, the first ever non-American champion in NASCAR National Series history. After this, he replaced Carl Edwards in the Cup Series at Joe Gibbs Racing and eventually bounced around a few teams before finding a home at Trackhouse Racing, where he scored 2 career Cup Series wins so far. The reason I've just told you his story is because of how much it means to the other Mexico Series drivers. He's an example that you can come from the series and make it to NASCAR's highest level. However, as I said earlier, Suarez only has a Rookie of the Year and 11 wins to his Mexico Series career, leaving him far from the greatest of all-time debate. Ruben Garcia Jr. is regarded as the most successful Mexico Series driver ever, as he has recorded 5 series championships, the most all-time, and 25 career wins, which puts him 3rd place on that list, but only 1 win behind the top 2. Those at the top of the wins list are 2006 champion Rogelio Lopez and 2020 champion Ruben Rovelo. In 2024, Ruben Garcia Jr. secured his 5th championship with 3 wins on the season. I would recommend you check out these series because of the potential for notable National Series drivers to come from this series, such as Daniel Suarez, Andreas Perez, and Max Gutierrez. If you want to check out the NASCAR Mexico Series in 2025, all races will be live streamed on the NASCAR Mexico YouTube channel for free. But what if I told you that isn't all the NASCAR Mexico Series has to offer, and they have a nearly identical developmental ladder as the NASCAR National Series? Well, that's exactly the case. As Mexico also has the Challenge Series, think of this as Mexico's Xfinity Series, and the Mikel's Truck Series. Simple, think of this as America's Craftsman Truck Series. Both series originated in 2017 and will typically race as support races for the Mexico Series. However, the Challenge Series does do a lot of combination events with the Mexico Series. The Truck Series races are always their own thing. Challenge Series cars are roughly identical to the Mexico Series cars, just with a little less power, while the Mikel's Truck Series features trucks looking very similar to the Craftsman Truck Series, with Chevrolet, Ford, and Dodge being the manufacturers involved. These trucks only have 180 horsepower, which allows them to go near an entire season without being rebuilt. The Challenge Series has 2 very notable champions in the NASCAR National Series world, those being 2020 champion Max Gutierrez, who has made multiple Craftsman Truck Series starts, and the 2022 champion Andreas Perez, who won the ARCA Menards Series Championship in 2024 and is likely to be moving up to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025. No driver has won multiple championships in the Challenge Series, but Rodrigo Rejon sits at the top of the all-time wins list with 11 wins. In 2024, Coque de la Parra won the Challenge Series championship with 2 wins in the 12-race season. Meanwhile, in the Mikel's Truck Series, the 2 most well-known champions happen to be the exact same as the Challenge Series, with Max Gutierrez taking the 2018 championship and Andreas Perez taking the 2020 championship. In 2024, the Mikel's Truck Series champion was Gerardo Rodriguez, who claimed his first title, as just like the Challenge Series, there are no multi-time champions. If you want to check out the series in 2025, all of the races will be live streamed on the NASCAR Mexico YouTube channel for free, just like the NASCAR Mexico series. Our second of 4 international series to cover is likely the second most well-known one, the NASCAR Canada Series. The Canada Series actually goes back to the old NASCAR Super Series, the biggest stock car racing series outside of the United States. NASCAR saw the popularity in this series and purchased it in September of 2006, meaning the inaugural NASCAR Canada Series season would come in 2007. All seasons, except for 2020, consist of anywhere in between 11 and 14 races. This schedule is made up of primarily Canadian short tracks, while also competing at some road courses, street courses, and even a dirt race. In 2018 and 19, they made their only appearances on U.S. soil, with races at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, which were part of a massive triple-header race day for New Hampshire's full-throttle fall weekend, with the ARCA Menards Series East Championship race and the richest race in Whelen Modified Tour history. 2 races on the Canada Series calendar have been ran every year since the inaugural season in 2007, with the exception of the 6-race-long 2020 season, those being at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park and Circuit Trios Rivieres. Riverside International Speedway is the last active track from 2007. However, the Canada Series would take a 4-year hiatus from racing there after the COVID pandemic. The final race worth noting is the Freshstone Dirt Classic at Ostwieken Speedway, a race that was planned to inaugurate in 2020 but was pushed back to 2022 due to COVID. Some very notable names from NASCAR's top series compete in this unique event, as this is currently the only dirt race in a NASCAR touring series besides the ARCA Menards Series Dirt Double. The 2024 running was headlined by NASCAR Cup Series driver Chase Briscoe, making his Canada Series debut, along with NASCAR legend Ken Schrader and ARCA driver Amber Balcaen in the field. The cars look rather similar to the NASCAR Cup Series Gen 6 car, with just a little more rectangular look. These cars are on the heavier side as they weigh 3,000 pounds and bring 525 horsepower. Car models in the Canada Series include the Chevrolet Camaro, Ford Mustang, and Dodge Challenger. You were probably wondering if you were seeing things correctly watching this footage, but yes, Dodge is still around in the Canada Series and happens to be the final NASCAR series receiving factory support from Dodge. As you would expect, nearly every driver in this series happens to be Canadian. This series is unlike the Mexico Series in that it produces young talent to move up to NASCAR's higher levels. What mostly happens with the Canada Series drivers is they get a ride here and there in the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series, but not a full season. DJ Kennington and Andrew Ranger are 2 examples of this, as they have periodically made some National Series starts, but have not run full seasons. Scott Steckley has recorded the most series championships with 4, most recently coming in 2015. Meanwhile, on the all-time wins list, Steckley sits in 4th place with 19 wins, while 3-time champion Andrew Ranger, often regarded as the greatest Canada Series driver ever, sits atop that list with 34 wins, 10 ahead of second-place DJ Kennington. In 2024, Marc-Antoine Camirand secured his second championship with 4 wins in the 13-race season. I would recommend you check out the Canada Series to watch the phenomenal racing product, especially if you like short-track racing. To watch the Canada Series in 2025, all races will be broadcast live on FloRacing. Our third international series to discover is the only series which is not confined to having nearly every race in one country, as these series race across a continent instead. This is the NASCAR Whelen Euro Series, along with the Euro 2 Series. Frenchman rally driver Jerome Galpin is to thank for the creation of this series, as after he attended a NASCAR race in 2002, he became fascinated with the sport and created a European stock car racing series, originating with races only in France in 2009. Galpin had connections with NASCAR executives, and they worked out a contract to make it an official NASCAR series starting in 2012 and began expanding their schedule across more of Europe. The cars are very similar to the Canada Series cars, only they're a touch lighter at 2.7 thousand pounds, are slightly wider, and have only 450 horsepower engines, race spec parts, and feature a sequential shifter. In fact, the Euro Series was the first NASCAR series to implement this sequential shifter, which is now featured in the NASCAR Cup Series Next Gen car. Car models found in the Euro Series include the Chevrolet SS and Camaro, Ford Mustang, and Toyota Camry. However, these models are mostly just used for aesthetics, as factory support is very limited in the Euro Series. And you may be wondering, are the cars across Euro Pro and Euro 2 any different? Not really, as the only real difference is the speed of the cars, as they're identical in every other way. So what's the difference between the two series then? Different licenses are awarded to drivers based on skill level and experience and come in three categories: gold, silver, and bronze. Euro 2 is for drivers with the silver or bronze license, and you could think of it as NASCAR Europe's Xfinity series, while Euro Pro is for drivers with all licenses. So there's really nothing stopping inexperienced drivers from racing in the Pro Series, and in contrast, are made to keep the pros out of the developmental series. Multiple NASCAR National Series drivers have traveled over to Europe to compete in this series, including names like Bobby Labonte, Myatt Snider, Ryan Vargas, Max Papis, and Jacques Villeneuve. Other drivers like Alan Day, Loris Hesmans, and Mark Goosens call this series their main racing series and occasionally make starts in the United States in National Series races. Drivers like Snyder and Vargas have come to race in this series for one big reason: road course experience. Oval racing outside of the United States, Canada, and Mexico is rather hard to find, especially in Europe. Therefore, this schedule for 2025 consists of 7 different venues, with each venue getting a doubleheader, making up a 14-round season. Only 2 oval tracks have ever been raced in the Euro Series, and one still exists on the calendar: Raceway Venray in the Netherlands. Playoffs do exist in this series, although they're not really much of a playoff. The last 4 rounds are simply worth double points, so this is the only NASCAR series classified with playoffs but having no set playoff field. In Euro Pro, Israeli driver Alan Day is often regarded as the greatest to ever do it, recording the most championships with 4 and the most wins with 32, 10 ahead of second place Andre Villarino. In 2024, Italian Vittorio Garelli claimed his first Euro Pro championship by dominating this season with 7 wins. That's half of this season's races. In Euro 2, the first ever multi-time champion was crowned in 2024, that being Czechian Martin Delbecq, who scored 6 wins in the 2024 season and tops the Euro 2 all-time wins list with 13 wins. I would recommend you watch this series if you're someone who loves pure road course racing, as that's the heart and soul of this series. Driver Ryan Vargas described the series as pure grassroots NASCAR road course racing, which definitely deserves a watch. And you can do so on the NASCAR Euro YouTube channel, as all races are featured live and for free there. Our final real-life NASCAR series to investigate is the newest NASCAR International Series, and is also the second newest NASCAR series, only behind the Classic Series. This is none other than the Brazil Sprint Race, which is definitely the least known international series. Some of you may recognize the name Tarso Marquez, who raced in Formula One in 1996, 97, and 2001. His brother Thiago is to thank for the creation of this series, which dates back to 2012. After a failed attempt to create a Brazilian stock car racing series in 2011, Thiago successfully established a series of his own, simply called Sprint Race. This was designed to be a series for young drivers to develop their craft and be ready to move up in the Brazilian motorsport ranks. In 2018, the series ventured outside of Brazil for the first time, as they made an appearance in Uruguay and would return there in 2019, while also racing in the United States at Florida's Homestead Miami Speedway infield road course and at Sebring International Raceway. In November of 2022, NASCAR announced they signed a deal with the series to make it an officially sanctioned NASCAR series and create the NASCAR Brazil Sprint Race. NASCAR has made it clear that they want to put more oval racing in their international series, especially in the Euro and Brazil series, since the Canada and Mexico series have raced oval since their inception. And in 2024, the Brazil series would do just that, as their championship races would take place at Circuito dos Cristais, the first ever oval race, which I must say were some great races. The 2024 calendar consisted of 8 stages with multiple races at each track. The notable events include the Night Challenge at Londrina, the 100-mile endurance race at Cascavel, and the special edition races at Cervelo, the aforementioned oval race, and at Interlagos, where Formula One's Brazilian, now known as Sao Paulo, Grand Prix is held. You're probably wondering, how in the world is that 100-mile endurance race an endurance race compared to any other NASCAR series where you'll see races anywhere from 250 to 500, even 600 miles. Well, again, this is a sprint racing series, as the average race is between 20 to 30 minutes long plus one lap, with one overtime attempt. The three races at Interlagos are to note as well, as those races receive the most attention of any Brazil races ever, all due to NASCAR Cup Series driver Daniel Suarez competing, as those races fell under the National Series Olympic break. Suarez would win race 2 of 3 at Interlagos, becoming the first ever driver to win races in multiple international series, and even doing so in the same year with his win in the Mexico Series Clash. However, this series is not for you if you enjoy contact racing, as we all learned through Daniel Suarez at Interlagos, as he had another race win stripped from him for bump drafting, which is seen as rough driving over there. The cars are some of NASCAR's lightest at 2.2 thousand pounds and have some of the lowest horsepower at just 300. Chevrolet Camaros and Ford Mustang models are the only models raced, making this and the Canada Series the only ones without Toyotas. There's been multiple different championships across the Brazil Series, with the format changing from 2023 to 24. In 2023, 3 champions were crowned: Pro, Pro-Am, and Am, with the champions in 2024 being the Brazil champion and the Challenge champion. Think of the Challenge Series as Mexico's Challenge Series, where it's more of a developmental series to get drivers ready for the main series. Multiple drivers can race the same cars, leading to co-champions. However, even with co-champions, only one can officially be crowned the official Brazil champion, which in 2024 was Alex Said, who was also a co-champion with Gabriel Casagrande. The racing in this series is quite captivating if you can get past the weak officiating. If you want to watch the Brazil Sprint Race in 2025, all races will be live streamed on the NASCAR Brazil YouTube channel. Now that we're done with the real-life NASCAR series, surely we're done here, right? Wrong. We still need to dive into the world of virtual NASCAR and the eNASCAR series, ran on the sim racing platform iRacing. 4 series make up the eNASCAR ladder, and they feature something NASCAR only sees in the virtual world: a relegation system. For now, we'll talk about the 3 main series making up the system, going from bottom to top: the Qualifier, Contender, and Coke series. Beginning with the Qualifier series, anyone from the iRacing platform, yes, even you watching this video, if you have an Oval A license on iRacing, or if you have an Oval B license and a 4.0 safety rating, you can compete for a spot in this series. This is the beginning of the ladder, as the top 20 drivers in the final point standings will move up to the next step of the ladder, the Contender Series. The drivers who fail to do this must fight to get a spot in the Qualifier Series again, and just try again next year. Moving on to the Contender Series, this consists of 40 drivers: the top 20 in points from the previous Qualifier Series season, and the bottom 20 drivers in points from the previous Coke Series season. The top 20 drivers in points from the Contender Series will move up to the Coke Series for their next season, while the bottom 20 in points are relegated down to the Qualifier Series. Now that we're at the pinnacle of the eNASCAR world, the Coca-Cola iRacing Series, the field consists of 40 drivers: the top 20 drivers in points from the previous Coke Series season, and the top 20 in points from the previous Contender Series season. The Coke Series originated in 2010 as the NASCAR iRacing Drivers World Championship, following the success of other esports leagues. NASCAR buying into the hype of esports clearly worked, as this series has become a hit and features an end-of-season prize pool of over $500,000, with the champion getting $100,000. You can expect a season to be around 18 races, with a 10-driver playoff, just like in the Craftsman Truck Series. While all drivers race in their own sim rigs in the comfort of their own homes, there were 2 live events in 2024. That meaning a recreation of the on-location driver sim rigs are built at the location, those being at Grant Park for the Chicago Street Race weekend and the championship race, where the championship 4 are all flown out to the NASCAR Hall of Fame and are racing on location. Despite what you might think, there have been some very notable names from the NASCAR National Series to race and win in this series, dating all the way back to the inaugural race in February of 2010. NASCAR Hall of Famer and 2-time Daytona 500 winner Dale Earnhardt Jr. won their inaugural race in 2010 at Daytona, being given a provisional entry to the field for being a key factor in iRacing's inception as being a test driver for all the different cars and tracks in the early stages of the sim. Cup Series driver Josh Berry also got part of his NASCAR start through the Coke Series, as he raced regularly from 2010 through 17 and recorded 3 career wins. Truck Series driver and 2024 Snowball Derby winner Caden Honeycutt also participates in this series, racing for Junior Motorsports. Speaking of which, let's look at the teams in this series. You'll see Cup Series teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, 2311 Racing, RFK Racing, and more, along with strictly esports teams. So, how do you improve your equipment if it's a virtual series? Well, there's 2 ways to get an edge on the field. The first being perfecting your custom setups. But that's just how to get an edge when everyone has the same speed. Actual pace is basically pay to play, as the teams who invest more money receive more pace. This is technically what happens in reality, only with extra pace guaranteed for more money invested. The cars you'll see in the Coke Series are virtual copies of the Cup Series Next Gen cars, while the Contender Series races the Xfinity cars, and the Qualifier Series races the Craftsman trucks. The greatest of all time debate really doesn't exist. It's easily Ray Alfalla. Across the 15 seasons of the Coke Series, only Ray Alfalla has won multiple championships, and he's got 4 of them. He also sits atop the all-time wins list with 27 wins, 7 ahead of second place Nick Ottinger. If you're someone who enjoys your racing with a bit of chaos, this is exactly the series you're looking for. To watch the Coca-Cola iRacing series, as well as the Contender and Qualifier series in 2025, all races are live on Tuesday nights on the iRacing and NASCAR YouTube channels. We're finally down to our last series to discover, which is one of my personal favorites due to the fantastic concept, the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. For the tons of NASCAR fans who also love college football and basketball and have been wishing to see a collegiate racing series, it's here. The College iRacing Series began running a full season with a champion awarded in the fall of 2022 and had 2 separate championships for the 22-23 school year: the Fall 2022 Championship and the Spring 23 Championship. That has since been changed, so it is now just one championship for a whole school year. But the amazing thing about this series is literally any iRacing member who is currently in college can participate in it, and can do so by participating in a 10-day long time attack with whatever car and track combination the race will feature. Each race alternates between running the Xfinity car and the Craftsman trucks. The top 40 fastest drivers from the time attack in the first 8 races in the 9-race season will qualify for the race's A main, with the next 40 drivers making up the B main, the next 40 in the C main, and so on. These other mains are really just for you as a driver to have fun, as you don't advance to the next main based on your finish, and you don't get prize money. The first 8 races award $1,000 in scholarship money for a race win, and after the first 8 races, the championship field is determined. If you're a NASCAR fan and you think the Championship 4 in the National Series is wild, this will blow your mind. The top 25 drivers in the points after race 8 are invited to participate in the championship race, the only race with no time attack. Whichever of those 25 drivers wins the championship race walks away with the grand prize, a $10,000 scholarship. So essentially, it's a championship 25 instead of a championship 4, or similar to the Monster Jam World Finals if you're familiar with that. While the Iowa football team has been struggling to stay relevant besides punting the last few years, I am allowed to hate on them. I am an Iowa State fan. They have had 2 generational athletes in the last few years. The first, of course, being WNBA star Caitlin Clark, who broke what seemed to be every NCAA record in her time at Iowa, and the other, of course, being Steven Wilson. Through the 3 completed seasons in the College iRacing Series, Wilson has led the Iowa Hawkeyes to 2 eNASCAR National Championships, which have come in the fall of 22 and in the 23-24 school year. He also leads the series in race wins with 7. The other College iRacing Series champion has been Logan Clampett for Saddleback College in the spring 2023 season. This series also feeds into the developmental ladder for eNASCAR, as the top 2 drivers in the final point standings who are not already in the Coke, Contender, or Qualifier Series will be invited to compete in the upcoming Qualifier Series season. If you love college athletics, this is absolutely the series for you, even if you don't know any of the drivers. All of the cars have a special paint scheme to represent the college they're competing for, so if there's someone racing for your favorite college, you can easily identify and root for them. All college iRacing series events are live streamed on the iRacing and NASCAR YouTube channels. Well, that certainly was a lot of NASCAR now, wasn't it? What I hope you all learned from watching this video is that there's so much more that NASCAR has to offer than what you might know of, and there's truly something for everyone. You love seeing the stars? There's the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. You love short track racing? There's the Regional Series, the Canada Series, and the Mexico Series. You love road courses? Try the Euro Series and the Brazil Series. You love chaotic racing? Try the eNASCAR ladder, and, well, also the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. You love college athletics? There's the College iRacing series. Or do you just love nostalgia and want to see the cars from your childhood or glory days as a fan racing again? Go check out a Classic Series race. NASCAR truly has something for every type of motorsport fan, and as an enjoyer of all forms of motorsports, this is why NASCAR is my favorite. Because there isn't just the 3 national or developmental series like you'd see in something like IndyCar or Formula One. There's more on the table than any other motorsport, and each part has their own fantastic, unique perks. And they all have some damn good racing too, truly the best in the world. Depending on how well received this video is, I may potentially make another one exploring all of NASCAR's defunct series. But for now, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.